Hello, it's the Happy Families Podcast, Friday edition. If you're new to the pod, every Friday we talk about the things that have worked or haven't worked in our family so that we can do better tomorrow and maybe help you to do better tomorrow. I had the most amazing conversation with the kids on Sunday. We engage in explicit teaching of values and principles that we want our kids to understand. On Sunday, I just had the coolest experience with the kids. Can't wait to tell you about what that was, why it worked, and what they thought. Plus, Kylie is just right into this kinesiology stuff. The research evidence suggests that it doesn't actually work, and yet we keep paying for it because we're finding that it works incredibly for our kids in our family. Why, when the evidence says it doesn't, would we say it does? Today we answer those questions and more. It's I'll Do Better Tomorrow right after this. Stay with us. Hello, welcome to the Happy Families Podcast, where you get real parenting solutions every single day. This is Australia's most downloaded parenting podcast. Okay, around the country, for most areas, not all, but most states and territories, school has gone back. Hopefully you've survived the week. We'd love to tell you about our kids and their school experience, but we've got a daughter in year 11 who said, it was fine. And we're homeschooling our youngest, so we've really got nothing to tell you about school this week, but we've got a whole lot of other stuff for you. Gee, I hope it's been good for you. Kylie, you're up first today. Kinesiology. I've been open and upfront about the fact that we spend a lot of money on a kinesiologist every so often, and I don't believe in it, but you keep on going. And
you've also asked me that maybe we might stretch the visits out a bit more.
Yeah, let's not go so often. Anyway, you've been to the kinesiologist with a couple of the kids just recently, and your I'll Do Better Tomorrow explains exactly why I'm happy to keep on paying for something that doesn't work. According to the evidence.
You're terrible.
I know, because it actually does work for our family.
It's interesting. I was talking with a friend recently, her background's psychology as well, and she's a practicing psychologist. And I was telling her about the experiences that I'm having with the kinesiologist and my children. And she looked me in the eye and she said, Kylie, she said, this is gold. She said, in traditional psychology-based, talk therapy, you will take your child along to a session, and more times than not, they walk in the door and they close the door behind them and you're left in the waiting room.
Because the client-therapist relationship is sacrosanct, and what happens in there is privileged and nobody knows, and it's all confidential.
That's right. And as a parent, I then wait to hear the debrief from my struggling 14-year-old or 18-year-old or whatever it is at the time. And depending on how they feel about the session, depends on how much or how little information I'll receive. But I'm never going to get the full picture, right? I'm never going to get like the nuance through the conversation and how the psychologist said what she said and what that actually means. What I love about the kinesiologist that we've found is that this has been a space from day one where I have been encouraged to be a part of it. And in the early days, it was so new to the kids and they actually struggled to kind of understand what was going on. So it was really important for me to be there so that I could talk them through it and help them understand. But as they've gotten older and they've become very comfortable in that space, the very first thing I say whenever we reach the appointment is, are you happy for me to come in? Would you like me to stay outside? I'm really happy to go to the shops. I can go catch up with a friend. And every time without fail, they're like, no, Mum, I want you. Now, I've got a daughter who can drive herself there now. I don't even have to take her, but she wants me there. And as I was talking with this friend, she said, this is gold. She said, because what it actually shows is that your children desperately want you to be a part of their lives, right? They actually want to be able to have these conversations, but some of them are tricky and they're worried about our feelings. They're worried about how we're going to cope with the weight of their problems, or if it's actually targeted at us, how they can share it with us in a way that doesn't leave the relationship damaged.
So there's like this third party. They get to talk to the third party about what's going on. You're allowed to be a bystander.
I'm kind of like a fly on the wall that they know's there.
Right.
Yeah.
But you're not a pestering, annoying fly on the wall. Wrong analogy. Like you're the pot plant that makes the room beautiful. Right, but you're and the pot plant sits there in the corner and doesn't say anything, but it adds to the feeling, the environment. It makes the room work better.
Well, here's the crazy thing: I actually do get to say something, and I get to share my perspective, and that comes from both both sides. My kinesiologist, she might actually ask if I've got anything else to add, but often the kids will answer her questions and then they'll look at me and they go, Mum, is there anything else you'd add? They actually, again, they're wanting and seeing that I have perspective that actually adds to the picture. It doesn't detract from it.
So my general position on this is the research evidence shows that there's no effects that we find from kinesiology in terms of benefit, health benefit, medical benefit, whatever. But what you're describing is why we keep paying and why the kids keep going. Because in psychology terms, we look at what we call the therapeutic alliance. In other words, we're talking about how well a client gets on with the therapist because we get the best results in therapeutic context when there's a high level of trust between them, when they can talk openly, and when the client is open to what the therapist has to say. And what you're really describing here is a counseling situation where they're doing a little bit of woo-woo kinesiology stuff. but it's the counseling situation, it's the conversations, it's the openness, the vulnerability. What that context is opening up is really, really deep. It's eye-opening, it's jaw-dropping. And when teenagers say, Mum, I'd like you to stay in here while I have this experience, this moment of vulnerability where I'm disclosing and working through really big challenges. That is, as our friend said, that is gold. Most parents, you can't buy that. And having that safe third party who facilitates this ongoing counseling style dialogue, that is extraordinarily valuable. And I think that's where the value for money actually comes in this particular context. I'm completely committed to it and sold on it as much as I bag it out because we get those results. So what's your take-home message?
Your teenage girl's book, Misconnection, the subtitle, Why Your Teenage Daughter Hates You, Expects the World and Needs to Talk. Just this whole experience for me has just been this beautiful reminder that our children actually desperately want us in the details of their lives, even when they're pushing us away, right? They really want us there. And sometimes it requires a third party, a trusted space, a safe space where they feel like they can share and you can carry the weight. Or you don't actually have to carry the weight of it. There's somebody else to do that for you.
Yeah, I would add, it doesn't have to be a paid consultation with it could be an auntie or a neighbour, or when the kids have got that third person, somebody to bounce things off, ideally with you in the room, but not necessarily. It's somebody else carrying the load, somebody else facilitating your child's well-being creates that community. So valuable. I thought you were going to say, kinesiology is awesome. That's the take-home message.
Well, it is.
Right.
It is awesome. Of
course it is.
And if you gave it a go, you might actually become a believer.
Yeah, I gave it a go a few years ago.
Yeah.
Up next.
Unbeliever. That's what you are.
Up next, the conversation that I had with the kids on Sunday that changed the game and gave me the reminder that these discussions where we explicitly teach our kids stuff, they really do work. Find out more in just a sec. Stay with us. We're back. This is the Happy Families podcast where you get real parenting solutions every single day. Every Sunday, we've talked about this a lot. We have time with our kids where we call it family home evening, although we do it in the mornings now. So it's not really it's more of a family home morning than a family home evening. You were away. I decided I was going to do it anyway. The kids were like, "Oh, do we have to?" I'm like, "Come on, 8:30. Everyone's got to come into the living room. We're doing this." And they moped their way in and they sat there and they sighed and they rolled their eyes. And I said, "Guys, every Sunday for January, we're going to be talking about healthy minds. Every Sunday in February, we're going to talk about healthy bodies. And every Sunday in March, we're going to talk about healthy spirits." And the kids were like, "Oh, this is boring." And I said, "I know, but we do this every Sunday. And, it's not a surprise, so let's go." And I decided that for healthy minds, I wanted to talk about media consumption. What is our media diet? And I wanted to really have their attention. I said, "Guys, I'm going to play you some music that I used to listen to when I was a kid." Now, for copyright reasons, I can't play it on the podcast right now, but I played some Henry Rollins Roland's band. I went to see them at the Hordern Pavilion in the early 1990s. It was the first time I ever got into a mosh pit and crowd surfed and rolled around up on top of everybody's hands. Roland's band music is pretty angry. Heavy drums, heavy guitars, big bass, and Roland screams. I mean, he's not screamo. It's not like that horrible kind of stuff, but he certainly yells a lot when you sound like you're in trouble when you're listening to him. He's lecturing you while he's quote unquote singing. Anyway, I've always loved Roland's band. I was actually listening to a bit of it over the last few weeks to work out what song I should play for the kids. And there's this one song of his called Low Self-Opinion. And the lyrics say something along the lines of, I think you've got a low self-opinion, man. I see you standing all by yourself, unable to express the pain at your distress. It goes on. And he's talking to somebody who does not feel good about themselves. And he says to them, if you could see the you that I see when I see you see me, you'd see yourself so differently. Believe me, if you could see the you that I see when I see you, you'd see yourself so differently, I assure you. I still remember this from when I was 17. And I said to the kids, these messages get inside you. But as they were listening to the song, I said to them, guys, I want you to have a think about what this music does to you. How does it make you feel? What sort of reaction do you get? And they told me, well, it's angry. It makes me feel a little bit anxious. It makes me feel like I'm being yelled at. And they talked about those feelings, and they were really great about that. And then I read them the lyrics because they weren't really picking up on the lyrics. They were more absorbed by, oh my goodness, Dad used to listen to this. And I said, what do you think about the lyrics? And they were like, the lyrics kind of don't match the music, because the lyrics are saying something important here about how we need to see ourselves as more than sometimes we do see ourselves. I was like, this is great. I said, so let's talk about another song. And I won't mention what it was, but I played a song that has some pretty unhealthy messages, but the music's really cool. It's a really catchy tune. And then I played another one similarly. And I said, so what do you think about these songs? And they're like, we really like the songs. I'm like, what do you think about the messages? And we talked about the lyrics. One of them is all about anxiety and feeding our anxiety, and not in a healthy way. And another one had some pretty dodgy lyrics as well. And they were kind of like, oh, this is a hard conversation for us because we like these songs, but the messages aren't good. I said, so what happens if you keep on giving yourself these messages? I mean, I can remember the music. I'm 50. I was listening to this stuff when I was a teenager. I was 16 and 17, and I can still remember it. And then I sang the jingle for Aeroplane Jelly, right? I'm like, I was listening to that when I was 5.
We all know you're a little bit abnormal.
Right? It gets inside you. And then I asked them the question, what matters more, the music or the message? And I just watched them wrestle. They argued with each other. They went backwards and forwards. We went around the room. They brought things up. Then they disagreed. Then they disputed with themselves rather than arguing with each other. Like, oh, I think I've changed my mind. And the conversation only went for about 20 or 30 minutes. It was not a long discussion. But the thing that I really wanted to emphasize or share in this I'll Do Better Tomorrow, which has gone too long, is that you came to me a few days later and said, I was in the car with one of the kids, and they mentioned that on Sunday you went through this discussion with them, and then they talked you through the discussion, and it seems like it had some impact.
Interestingly, she had been thinking about some of the music that she's been listening to, and she said, Mum, I've got this song, and she said, the music is so catchy. She said, but as I've been paying more attention, because Dad was talking to us about, the meaning behind the words, she says, I've realized that some of the lyrics aren't very good. Mm. And I said, what do you do in a situation like that? And she said, it's so hard because I just love the song. Like, it just hooks me in and I want to keep singing it. And I said, yeah, that's really tricky. I said, what have you decided? And she said, I can't listen to it. And I don't know if she'll keep that resolve, but I love that she's having this conversation and the internal dialogue is shifting as she's starting to recognize the power of not only the music, but the words.
Yeah, and the critical thing here is that we're not telling them what they have to do. Because if we tell them what they have to do, we will lose them. Instead, we're sharing a principle, we're asking them what they think, and then we're provoking them a little bit and letting them think about it ongoingly and continuing the conversations. And that's where you get that identification with the values rather than I'm doing it because I have to. That's where you get the integration of the values. That's where you make those values intrinsic. And that's really at the heart of everything that we talk about in my books and on this podcast. And I wanted to share it because it highlights how it works when you create discussion rather than when you lecture. But when you also, in that discussion, you're allowed to have an opinion. It's not like, oh, well, you decide, kids. It's not this, the kids can make up their own minds all the way through their lives. You definitely want to be explicitly teaching them. Some people say you shouldn't bother explicitly teaching. It doesn't work. And it's certainly challenging. But when you have that reflection, it makes such a difference. Also, pro tip to you, because when she said that to you, you didn't say, good, I don't like you listening to it. You said, well, what do you think you should do? You encouraged more reflection.
When I think about what you've just said, none of these conversations are a one and done conversation. If that's all we do, then explicit teaching doesn't work because it's just a one-off. It's just a blip in the scheme of their lives. But if we're consistently having conversations with them that bring them back to that wrestle, that bring them back to that conversation where they get to be challenged and push against the boundaries, that's where the real learning takes place.
We really hope that these take-home messages are helpful for your family and that you can take them home and have some great conversations with your kids. And, I don't know, booking for a kinesiologist, maybe.
I've got a good one if you need one.
Have a great weekend, everyone. The Happy Families podcast is produced by Justin Rulon from Bridge Media. Mim Hammonds provides all the research, admin, and additional support that we need to run the pod. Hey, how's the social media ban going? We're going to talk about that on Monday. Please join us then. Plus a big conversation about body image coming up next week as well. If you'd like more info on resources, keep listening to the podcast. Share it with your friends because it'll make their family happier as well. And visit happyfamilies.com.au for more.